Hello everybody, my name is Andrew Eisele. Thank you for tuning in to this video tutorial for Hal Leonard's Quick Pro Guides on Reason 5. This particular video we're going to start off with is an overview of Reason 5. We're going to take a look at the software, the layout, some of the menu options, and the preferences. So what we see here on our screen is the basic Reason software. I've loaded up a song that I've created. This is, by the way, this is what you'll be working towards if you're working through the book. This is the end of Chapter 9, Mixing. Right now we're looking at what we call the Reason rack. The rack is a housing. It looks like a 19-inch rack mount case. This is where we can load up any of Reason's devices, including mixers, effects processors, synthesizers, drum machines, and the like. Down below is what we call the sequence window. So in here you will find all of these objects we see. These are MIDI sequences or MIDI clips. They contain note information. These are the things that actually trigger the synthesizers that have them make sound. On the left-hand side you'll see the device list or the track list. If I select something, like this track here, the resin bass, this you'll notice a red highlight around it that denotes that this track has been selected, and that's where the MIDI data will be routed to. So if I hit any keys on my keyboard, you'll see sort of a green animation over that. It's letting you know that it's receiving MIDI data, and we're actually able to hear the MIDI data, or the synthesizer. Let's go ahead and look up at the top. I'm just going to drag this down a little bit so we can see more of the window. And let's just look at the main menu items up at the top. So here we see Reason, the drop-down list. The most important thing here is Preferences, which we're going to come back to in just a second. This is where we can set up all the preferences for the program. Under the File menu, you'll find New, Open, Close, all the different save options, Save, Save As. We can also import MIDI and export MIDI. We can also export our song as an audio file or export a loop as an audio file. It also gives us the options at the very bottom where you will find previous songs or current songs that we're working on. So it's a short list, but it does offer you a quick way to get back to a session that you were working on earlier. Under the Edit page, depending on what device you have selected, the Edit drop-down will change. Right now I have the Reason bass selected. If I were to select, say, this mixer, and you'll notice once I select it, it gets this blue highlight around it. That's letting you know that this is the device that's currently selected in Reason. If I look at Edit, you'll see that the options change. If I go down to the ReDrum, which is a drum machine, if I click on that, we get the blue highlight, and if I look at the Edit menu, we see a bit more information, a bit more things that we can do in terms of editing that particular instrument. To the right of that, you'll see the Create menu. This is the drop-down box that allows us to create any device that we would want to use in Reason. This includes mixers, all of the synthesizers, samplers, and drum machines. Here in the center we have the M-Class Mastering Suite Combo, or Combinator. These are the individual elements of that mastering suite, which you can use on an individual basis, or you can load up the entire suite in the Combinator, which is what we have up here at the top. This is our mastering Combinator. Just below that, we'll find some advanced effects processing. These are sort of the meat and potato effects, which we'll be looking at. We have the spider devices, which allow us to merge and split both audio and control voltage messages. And just below that, we have the matrix pattern sequencer and the arpeggiate, which is a monophonic arpeggiator. These are used for generating patterns. Pretty cool stuff. The last option we have is the Rebirth input machine. I'm running on a Mac, and the Rebirth was the precursor to Reason, but it's unavailable for Mac at the moment, so we won't be utilizing that. Under Options, you will find some pretty cool stuff in here. There's Enable Keyboard Control, which allows us to assign specific functions within the Reason rack two keyboard keys on our computer keyboard. Just below that is the remote override edit mode. This allows us to go in and override any kind of stock setups in terms of controllers. If your MIDI controller has knobs and sliders, chances are there's a preset for it, but you can certainly override that. Or if you just have a generic MIDI controller, you can use the same function to assign any parameter to any knob on your keyboard controller. Other things in here, you'll see the toggle back to front, or back to... this allows us to switch the rack around. The key command is tab, so if I hit tab, it reverses everything. And here we can see the mixer and all of the devices. You can see the cabling going up to them in terms of the mixer. It sort of covers our signal flow. Also, I want to point out, on the right-hand side of any of these menus, like under Edit or even File Open, you'll notice, like New, that's the Command N key. Those are what we call key commands. So anything that you see on the right-hand side of these drop-down menus, if it's been assigned to a key command or a quick key, you can use those keystrokes to engage those functions. Reduce cable clutter. This is a really cool one. This just allows you to select a device, and it only shows you the cables. Like if I go down and select the ReDrum, you'll notice how all of the other cables, except for the cables having to do with the ReDrum, are sort of transparent, while the ones that are coming from the ReDrum are opaque. So that's kind of a cool thing. And then last but not least is our Windows drop down here. We can detach the sequencer window. So down below, this whole sequence we can detach, and it can actually take up the entire span of your monitor, however big your monitor is. You can have your sequencer laid out across that. The rack itself is remains at this resolution, this width. You can't make it any wider, so we're kind of stuck working with that way. But if you had two monitors, you could have one monitor that's dedicated for the sequencer and the other monitor that has the racks and whatever tools you're using, which is kind of cool. At the very bottom of our screen, we've already talked about the sequencer window a little bit, and our navigation bar. I can just click and drag and see all of that information moving around. But at the very bottom, you'll notice here, this is what we call the transport. Now, one of the cool things in Reason is if you hold your cursor over something, eventually a text box will open up, identifying what button or knob or whatever function that particular button is. So, and this has to do with pretty much anywhere in Reason. So if I hold my cursor over something, it will it'll give you a text box describing what that function is, which is kind of cool. But over here, we'll see our inputs and outputs, any signals coming in or out. In terms of audio, you'll see that. The DSP is showing you what's happening in terms of how much your computer's processor is being taxed. So the more computer resources we're using, the more instruments and effects, you'll start to see this moving quite a bit. Calculations lights up when it's doing background calculations or loading samples. Blocks. Blocks is a sort of advanced arrangement mode, which we cover in the advanced book, the sound design book, and advanced sequencing. Here is our options for our metronome. We can turn on the click. The click is a metronome. We can control the pre-count. So when we gauge that, if you look under options, you'll see down here a number of pre-count bars. Right now it's set to 1. So it'll give you 4 beats before it actually starts recording. That way it gives you that timing reference. You have a tap tempo. So if you wanted to sort of tap in your tempo of your song, or you can manually do it right here. You can increase it or decrease it, or just double click on it and type in a new tempo. Just above that is your song position. This coincides with the song position line or locator. As I move this around, you'll see that this is updating. Right now we're right at 16 bars. Just below that is the, it's based in time. It's the time position. So that's hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. To the right of that is your standard transport control, rewind, fast forward, stop, play, and record. Over here are overdub modes or alternate take modes. Just below that is your quantize while recording button, which is a big favorite of mine. We'll definitely be covering that. And over here are your locators. Right now our right locator is set at 109. If I click here and then type 9, we can see that our left and our right locators are right there. I'm going to move the song position line right there. Notice we have the loop on. Now the loop ties with the song position line. So if I hit play, you'll see my song position line starting to move. What we're listening to is this Japan pluck instrument, and it's playing those sounds. When it gets to the end of the right locator, it will loop around. So that's what the loop function is. And last but not least is the groove mixer, which we'll go into a little bit later. Just allows us to inject some timing variances and grooves to different tracks or different MIDI data. So that about wraps up this video tutorial in terms of opening up Reason, getting it running. Actually, I wanted to cover one last thing, and that is preferences. So when you first load the program, when you first install Reason, it asks you a couple questions about what type of hardware you have, if you wanted to set them up at that point, or if you wanted to do it later on. If you've already done it, you may have an instance where you want to change something or add a new controller, or if something should happen with your audio interface, if it gets disconnected, you'll have to go in and reassign it from the preference window. So right now we're looking at the general preference tab. In here, a couple things that I just want to point out. Right here, the default song. I talk about this in the book. You have your empty rack, which basically opens up just a blank canvas. There's nothing installed in it. Built in will load up a template song that ships with Reason. That's sort of the default. And then you have custom. And I've gone through and set up a custom setup, which is just the when I first start this, like if I start a session, when I go to File New, it uses the setup template, which is the default mastering suite and the mixer. And from that point on, I can just add whatever I want. It's always a good idea to have a mixer created first. That way, when you create any instruments, it automatically will wire itself. That's one of the cool things about Reason. It's an auto-cabling function, which we'll explore a little bit later. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other preferences that we have. Under Audio, you will find your audio preferences. Right now, our audio device, this coincides with our hardware interface. Incidentally, the hardware interface, which is what you see up here at the top, this device is works in tandem with your physical audio sound card or audio interface. In my instance, I'm using a Motu 828, but you'll notice it says Soundflower. Soundflower is just a simple utility program that allows me to route different audio signals and combine them. That's how I can record the microphone and the output of Reason at the same time into my screen capture software. But whatever your audio interface is, whether it's the built-in Mac or whatever, this is what you would select. And if you see the green check mark, that means Reason sees it and it's ready to use it. Sometimes you'll come in here and you may see a red X. It's just denoting that it's lost signal or it's lost communication with it. A couple other things in here about your audio. You'll see your sample rate. You can certainly pick your sample rate from this window, whether that's 96K or 44.1. But you'll notice there's not a bit depth. The bit depth is controlled by the hardware control panel. So since I'm using a Motu 828, if I were to hit the control panel, it would open up the Audio MIDI Setup, AMS, which is located in your Utilities folder. If you're on a PC, it's going to be in your control panel. But that's essentially where you can go in, and whatever your hardware is, if it's capable of 16-bit or 24-bit, you can set it from there. Keyboards and control surfaces. This is where we would set up our MIDI controller. I'm using an Ovation Remote SL. SL stands for soft label. I use this as a master keyboard. You'll see down here, master keyboard input. You have the option of not using a master keyboard, but if you're only using one keyboard controller, you might as well just make it your master. It is possible to have multiple keyboard or controllers, not necessarily keyboard controllers, but any kind of controller. Here I have the Korg Nano Pad, which is drum pads and a sort of XY axis controller. And what you can do, which is kind of fun, is you can lock specific controllers to a specific device in Reason. So I can allocate this just to play a Kong drum synthesizer or something like that. You'll notice that I've got this sort of red stop sign with an exclamation point in the middle of it. That means that I had this connected before, but it's not connected at the moment, so it's just letting you know that it doesn't see it. Right now I'm just using the Ovation Remote SL. Other options you'll see is under the Advanced tab, we have external control. This allows us to play Reason from an external sequencer or from another program that doesn't necessarily use Rewire. Or if you had, like, say, an MPC, which is a MIDI production center, we can utilize these buses. Basically, they give you 16 channels per port, giving you a total of 64 MIDI input channels that you can use to work with Reason. If you wanted to use Reason as a sound module for a hardware sequencer. You can also sync up Reason or have Reason sync to something else from this tab. And then last but not least is your computer keyboard. If you were to hit F4 on your computer keyboard, you get what we call the on-screen piano keys. And this allows me to play sounds. Let me just close this for a second and make sure I have a track selected. So I'm going to go down and select the Japan pluck track. So I'm playing that currently with my MIDI controller, but if I hit F4 and bring up the on-screen pianos, I can now hit keys on my computer keyboard. Like if I hit A, you can see it registering there. Which is it's a great way of testing out sounds, especially if you don't have a MIDI controller connected. Like if you're using a laptop and you don't have your controller, you can utilize this to generate sequences and record with them. So it's pretty cool stuff. And that about wraps up this tutorial. Check out the next one.